Shortly after the death of Pope Paul VI, on August 26, 1978, Cardinal Albino Luciani was elected as Pope John Paul I. He was seen as a promising leader who would bring reform and a bright future to the Church. But just a month into his papacy, he was found dead in his Vatican quarters. The Vatican claimed a heart attack was the cause, but no autopsy was performed because of Vatican's rules on not conducting post-mortem examinations unless absolutely necessary. However, after his demise, investigative journalists and authors began to suggest a darker story was behind his death. They argued that the Pope was murdered by a cabal of powerful Vatican officials, the Italian Mafia, and the notorious Masonic Lodge. This criminal web feared the new Pope would expose their global criminal network. It's 1929 in Rome. Italy's fascist leader Benito Mussolini is about to sign a document that will reshape the Catholic Church forever. It's known as the Lateran Treaty, an agreement that officially establishes Vatican City as an independent state under the sovereignty of the Pope. It marked the end of a long standoff between the Italian government and the Church that started decades earlier. You see, before 1870, the Pope wasn't just a religious figure. He ruled over a vast stretch of central Italy known as the Papal States. However, during Italy's unification, the new Italian army marched into Rome and absorbed the papal territories. The Pope lost his land, his political power, and effectively became a prisoner inside of Vatican. For decades, he refused to acknowledge the legitimacy of the Italian government. The Lateran Treaty ended that feud. In exchange for the lost territory, the Vatican received hundreds of millions of dollars and a full tax exemption. To manage this new wealth, Pope Pius XI brought in a man named Bernardino Nogara, a layman who had one bold condition: total freedom to invest without moral or religious limitations. In other words, he wanted to run Vatican finances as a Wall Street banker. Nogara would go on to build the foundation of the Vatican's modern financial empire, quietly moving church money into global markets, industries, and institutions. In 1942, while the war was still raging across Europe, Vatican established Istituto per le Opere di Religione, commonly known today as the Vatican Bank. Officially, it was founded to manage church donations and fund religious works, but in reality, it became a fortress. A secretive financial institution with little oversight and even less transparency, it became a key figure in operating vast Vatican finances. By the late 1960s, the Italian government started asking questions. Why wasn't the Vatican paying taxes like every other institution? For years, it had quietly amassed a vast fortune, speculating in global markets from behind closed doors. Terrified that public scrutiny might expose the scale of their hidden wealth and unleash massive tax liabilities, they acted fast. A covert plan was set in motion to move financial assets out of Italy and away from prying eyes. At the center of this operation were three men: Paul Marcinkus, a Chicago-born bishop who would oversee this operation from inside the Vatican; Michel Sindona, a shadowy international financier with alleged ties to the Mafia and a clandestine Masonic lodge called Propaganda 2 or P2. This wasn't just any Masonic group. P2 burrowed deep into Italian society, into the media, military, parliament, and even future prime ministers, including Silvio Berlusconi. Many refer to it as the shadow government, Italy's deep state. The third figure in this operation was Roberto Calvi, known in the press as God's banker. He was the head of Banco Ambrosiano, key player in laundering illicit money. Vatican Bank was one of its shareholders. Allegedly, under Calvi's leadership, the bank funneled mafia drug profits through international channels, with certain Vatican factions allegedly acting as its silent partner. The secret financial web grew fast, but so did the danger of exposure. In the 1980s, the operation started to crack. Sindona was convicted of major financial crimes, unraveling part of the network. The door into the crime web was opened. In August 1978, after a short conclave, a quiet cardinal from northern Italy, Albino Luciani, is elected Pope. He takes the name John Paul I. To the world, he's soft-spoken, smiling, and humble, but inside the Vatican, he's seen by some circles as a serious threat. Luciani had long suspected something was rotten in Church's financial core. Years before his papacy, he discovered that a Vatican-controlled bank in his region had been quietly sold off. The deal was linked to the Vatican Bank's shadowy financial dealings. Luciani was displeased by that, but without any success. However, that moment marked him as a man with integrity in an institution increasingly ruled by power and profit. Years later, Luciani becomes Pope and decides to clean house and dismantle the financial cabal that had taken root in the church. However, barely a month into his papacy, he was found dead. According to investigative journalist David Yallop's controversial 1984 book, In God's Name, Luciani's sudden death wasn't natural. It was a professional hit. Yallop identified 6 powerful men whose careers and freedom depended on the Pope's silence. Along with the before-mentioned Marcinkus, Sindona, and Calvi, the list included Cardinal John Cody, Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Jean Villot, and Licio Gelli, the infamous leader of Propaganda Due. Here's how Yallop says it happened. On the night of September 28, 1978, the Pope summoned Cardinal Villot and outlined his plan to him. Marcinkus and others were to be removed immediately. That conversation, according to Yallop, set in motion the conspiracy to end the Pope's life. After the conversation, Villot allegedly made a single decisive phone call, likely to Marcinkus. They agreed the Pope had to go. That night, John Paul went to bed, and by morning, he was dead. Yallop claims that a poison was chosen for the job and that immediately after he was found dead, a cover-up was set in motion. Cardinal Jean Villot removed key evidence: the Pope's medicine, his glasses, slippers, notes, even his will was gone, and all probably because there were traces of vomiting on them which could potentially have traces of the poison. Furthermore, suspiciously early after the Pope's death, embalmers arrived. So early, in fact, it suggests that they were called even before the Pope's death was officially announced, and the embalming process itself broke all of the rules. No blood drained, no organs removed, just chemicals pumped in, destroying any chance of a proper autopsy. If any evidence of a poison existed, it was gone. Of course, regardless of that, no autopsy was planned because of, again, Vatican's rules on not conducting post-mortem examinations unless absolutely necessary. By midday, the official story was out. The Pope had died of a heart attack, maybe triggered by an accidental overdose of his medication. To support their version of events, the Vatican informed the media that the Pope had been suffering from heart issues. However, this claim was swiftly contradicted by his personal physician along with close family and friends. At the urging of his relatives, a medical report from 6 months before his death was published, showing he was in excellent condition with no evidence of heart trouble. Additionally, John Paul's brother Eduardo stated that a separate medical checkup just 3 weeks before the Pope's passing also confirmed he was in good health. Although these claims sparked conspiracy theories, no official investigation was started. The Pope was successfully silenced. 4 years after his death, in 1982, one of the key figures in the alleged plot, Roberto Calvi, was found hanging beneath London's Blackfriars Bridge. His pockets were stuffed with bricks and cash. Officially, his death was ruled as an open verdict, indicating that there was insufficient evidence to clearly determine the cause or circumstances surrounding it. Many believed he was silenced. Weeks later, his Banco Ambrosiano collapsed. Over $1.4 billion of unsecured loans evaporated, many tied to the Vatican Bank. The Vatican admitted moral involvement and quietly paid $241 million to creditors, but deeper accountability they denied. In 1983, a 15-year-old Vatican citizen, Emanuela Orlandi, vanished on her way home from music school. Decades later, she's still missing. Her case became one of Italy's most haunting mysteries, and in 2022, a Netflix documentary, The Vatican Girl, connected her disappearance to the same corrupt network, the Mafia, the Vatican, and possibly even Propaganda Due, the same network Pope John Paul I may have been trying to destroy. Decades after the sudden death of Pope John Paul I, the true circumstances surrounding his demise remain shrouded in mystery. While the official explanation points to a heart attack, alternative theories, often dismissed as conspiracies, still persist. What is undeniable, however, is that during this period, elements within the Vatican were deeply entangled with powerful and corrupt networks, including clandestine Masonic lodges and criminal organizations like the Mafia. These ties expanded far beyond Italy, implicating a global criminal web. The lingering question is whether these dark connections still persist within the heart of the Church today. If the answer is yes, then I sincerely wish the new Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, Leo XIV, has the will, power, and courage to confront and purge the shadows that haunt the very institution that is meant to embody love, truth, and faith.